Good evening. You're very welcome to Words on Whiskey, episode 52. And I'm going to fix the issue we're having with Facebook, so just bear with us. Okay, so I hope everybody's online, and those on Facebook have also got the stream coming to you live. So I hope you're keeping well. The pubs are open, as we all know, and restrictions on movement are reduced. So hopefully you're getting out and getting a chance to visit some of your favorite Irish whiskey distilleries. And I think now more than ever, they really need our support. And I think that they're really making big efforts to take on visitors. So if we can do that, great. In this case, today's guest is actually not from a distillery. They have experience in the distilling business for the last decade or so, and they are an independent whiskey producer. So it gives me my pleasure to introduce my friend and Quinzil. Good evening.
Hi, Sergio. Thanks for having us tonight. Good to be with you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. You're up in Carlingford direction, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I'm just on the loch here in the Cooley Peninsula. So real whiskey making region with two distilleries just on my back door and lots of maturation warehouses. So yeah, this is, they say Cork is the place where things happen, but I think this is the place where things happen, you know?
Yeah, well, we won't get into an argument with people here, but yeah, I know. I mean, we met by coincidence, I think, a long time ago now, when I was traveling down from Belfast down to Dublin, and I decided to call into my old workplace and found out it had gone and vanished and was now a bonded warehouse. So
yeah, I was trying to figure out myself when that was. I think it was mid 2014. Yeah. And you still say to this day that you got lost and you wanted to check your old job premises out, but I think you were just wanting to visit and have a taste of some whiskey, you know?
Well, maybe I won't plead guilty on that one. I'll plead the Fifth Amendment on that. But look, I'm delighted to have you on the show. We don't catch up often enough, because I suppose with COVID as well over the last year and a bit, it's been difficult. How have you been keeping? Has it affected you in any way?
Yeah, it's it's been tough for everybody, obviously. We are quite a dynamic, small company that spreads ourselves very wide and far. So we travel a lot. There's days that we can't remember which cities we're in the last week even. So yeah, it has affected us, and we like to get out and see the customers face to face. Now, obviously, we were well ahead with a lot of these kind of Zoom kind of calls, and have been doing this thing for a long time, online tastings and things. But it's still, you miss seeing people face to face and actually having a little toast or slancha with them on the glass, and even you're in the glass and seeing the expressions. It is different, you know.
And you would have traveled quite a bit with the role. I mean, you were telling me so many states in a week you did.
Yeah. I think the record is 8 international airports in 1 week. But Lewis, our international sales commander, we call him, or the commander of worldwide sales, he might be in multiple time zones in 1 week sometimes. And the guy doesn't know if he's gone east or west or where he's actually been some of the times, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah. It's
I have that feeling, and I don't go anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's tiring, but it's you get to see people, and you get to experience what people, how they enjoy the whiskey, and what you get lots of feedback, you know.
Yeah. I mean, your current role now, Quinzil, your title is slightly long: Master of Wood and Liquid Innovation. That's a nice way of actually describing what you do.
Yeah. Well, again, we see ourselves as quite dynamic and what do you call it, quirky in a way, if you want to say it. So I didn't want to choose the title manager because what does manager tell you? Nothing really, you know. So we were basically trying to have a bit of fun, and then also all my background of blending and experience of cast and wood experimentation, which boils back to the pioneering days of Kinahan itself, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
So that was a fun title, but it also says a lot. I mean, Master of Wood and Liquid Innovation. We get good laughs about the Master of Wood sometimes, but Liquid Innovation. It's a very exciting thing, and I'm learning every day still. There's not a day that I don't learn about liquid and wood and uptake of liquid and maturation. But yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah, I mean, you're with Kinahan's now for 6-7 years, been there from the very, very start. But I mean, you do have. Well, actually, let's take it back further. Quinzil to Plessis. It's about as Irish a name as mine. Where are you from originally, and how did you end up here?
I was born in South Africa, and unfortunately, that's why I have such a harsh accent sometimes. I never spoke English as a child. I learned English at school, so that's forgive me sometimes for my accent. It's obviously changed a lot in the 23 years that I've been here. And I came here when at the beginning of the Celtic Tiger. I was actually arrived here a few days before the Omagh bomb, and I went through Omagh the day of the bomb.
Cool.
So this August 1998 is when I landed on the island of Ireland.
Yeah, and you fell in love with it and met your wife here, and that was it?
Yeah, that's all history, you know.
Very good. How did you get into the whiskey business?
You're not I was very lucky.
Originally,
I was very lucky. My background is law. I've got a business law degree, and I did all the Irish FE1 Law Society exams to become a solicitor. I worked with one of the big law firms in Dublin while I was trying to get all my Law Society exams, entry exams. After you have a degree, you still have to do them. And then the crash came, and I wasn't happy anymore in law and debts, and there was so much debts around, and obviously that's something I was working in. So I done a bit of a what would you say? I thought about my life and my situation and what I really want to do. And I took out a few years with basically a bit of a career break. And that was when Jack launched Teeling Whiskey, and the warehouses were just down the road from me, and I was available, and I was taken in and taught a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so it all started in Green Ore then for you in the warehouse.
It did, yeah, it did, and obviously a lot of high bars were set. The Teeling family is a long heritage of whiskey craft people and distillers, and obviously they had Cooley and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of experience. Alex Chasko, I learned from him on a daily basis. And then when they saw that I'm reliable and fairly okay, they left me to my devices. I managed the warehouses for them, took care of the warehouses, and started learning about blending under Alex, and it's history from there on.
Yeah. And was it something that you just fell in love with immediately, or what was it that captivated you about the whole process?
I love cooking, and I'm always fascinated with messing around with flavors and things. And for years I've been home brewing also, so making like craft beers and all that sort of stuff. I don't distill. I never distill. It's obviously legal, so you can't do that. But craft beer, and I walked into the warehouse, got the smell, and it's been a passion dream of mine since then. You know, it's every time I walk into a warehouse, it's just beautiful and wonderful for me to experience those the shares, the angel shares, and what else goes with it, the wood and all the aromas, and you just can't. You know?
Obviously, even though it was only 6-7 years ago, I mean, there have been huge changes obviously since then, and you have your career has taken you to different companies as well. Where did you go after Teeling, and how do you see the market?
I went to Brown Forman when they were setting up Slane. Prior to the place being completed, I came in to help with setting up and commissioning a lot of the equipment. I did all the blends. I did the first of more than 500,000 liters of blends for the Slane product as we know it now. It's a great product. Obviously, it's a good Irish whiskey, and commissioned all the equipment for the blending side of the project. I was involved a little bit with the distillation side, but more with helping commissioning and day-to-day setup before the place was fully commissioned. But the blending spirit side of everything was my baby, and I commissioned all that, and obviously did all the blends for them. So depending on what bottles they used a lot of 1 liter bottles for the international duty-free markets, and 700 ml for Europe, 750 ml. So it's probably short of 500,000 bottles. The first bit of stuff that I blended up, what experience. I was under the division of global production, so my title was logistics and quality, and obviously I was the blender also. It was wonderful,
Yeah, and then you moved on to Kinahan's, I think, after that.
Yeah. So
what that came about?
It was about it's about 300 years ago now. It'll be 4 years in the beginning of the year now, and I've known the family, the people that own it, for quite some time through various contracting kind of jobs, and I liked what the brand stood for, and I loved the pioneering aspect of it. So it basically has given me a lot of leeway and a bit of, if you want to call it, play around and experiment. And I love experimenting. So it suits me fine, and it fits very well into the brand, the experimentation and the innovation. And I'm just constantly innovating as much as I want, and I'm innovating with some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, but a lot of the and of course, I almost titled you as an independent bottler before, and you pulled me on it, because independent bottling is quite different from being an independent producer. Do you want to tell us what those differences are, Quinzil?
Yeah, and again, when I'm explaining this, I don't want to insult anybody or say that somebody is lesser or more, or so just bear with my explanation. So we are everything bar the distillery of a distillery corporation. So imagine a corporation that owns a distillery. They distill their own liquids, they mature their liquid, they procure their own casks, they work out their own recipes, they do their own blends. That's what we know a distillery does. We are all of this, apart from we don't have a distillery. So Kinahan's model has always been procuring liquids and procuring the best liquids, and then doing basically magic with them. So maturation. So we are in charge of our own maturation, which distinguishes us a little bit more from like a bottler, because a bottler would just procure liquids and then they would send it to a bottling plant. Now, some of them are a little bit more involved than others, and some of them are not as involved. We would procure our own casks. I would select the casks for my recipes that I've specifically designed. And again, very few, that's the distinction. Some bottling companies might get specialist consultants to work these recipes out for them. So again, they might be in-house, they might not, but we do everything in-house. Everything is done in-house. All the experimentation, all the cask purchases, the selection of the casks, the recipe development, and the blending. Now, obviously, Quinzil can't do everything. I still rent staff, and I rent facilities to help me and people to help me, because when you're doing a big blend of a couple of thousand liters, there's no way one man can empty all the casks himself. And this is the same that's done anywhere else in the world. So yeah, but we would have total control of this. We also have our own tenancies with warehouses, bonded warehouses. So that's the other difference again. Also, we don't just pay somebody rent to store casks. We have we're in control of those aspects also, and we get involved of all that stuff.
Yeah. So when you source liquid, do you literally get just liquid, or do you get liquid with the barrel?
No, I buy the liquid. So depending on what, so we lay down a lot of casks. I don't think people know how many casks we have, but we have a good amount of casks, and I would buy liquids for various projects. So it can be anything from new make spirit to maybe still immature spirit of a short period or 2 periods or 3 periods or 5 years or 6 years, depending on my recipe. And obviously these are confidential things that I don't discuss the ages and the periods, but all of that is part of the product design. Same as what a big corporation will decide. Now we are releasing a 10-year-old product, or now we are releasing a 20-year-old product. There's a plan always in place. Did you plan that 20 years ago that you developed the recipe recently, although you've been storing that liquid for 20 years? Or so the same with us. We might procure some liquid, but we might finish it off for a long time, or we mature it for a long time. And I'm more in favor of maturing liquid for a long time when other people will call it cask finishing. I don't cask finish for a short while. I always cask finish for a long time. So my cask finish is normally a few years.
Okay. And do you have maturation, a full maturation as well in various other casks?
Yeah, we have, I think the oldest, it's close to 20 years and more probably of liquid that we have. So we have a lot of liquid, and we have a lot of experimental casks. The division is divided up, and I can go into all the different type of products that we have, but we have very exclusive single release type of products.
Yeah.
And then we just have normal other kind of in-between products, and then we have our heritage brand. So our heritage brand will be lovely, very nice traditional Irish whiskey finished in bourbon, matured in bourbon, which will be a 10-year-old single malt, a heritage malt, which is a non-age statement malt. Again, we don't go into age statements because it's about the quality of the whiskey, and do people like it, or do they prefer it to another product? We don't try and say that a product that's 10 or 20 or 30 years old has to be more superior than a product that has no age statement on it. And that's the difference about the experimentation that we do on a day-to-day basis. We can offer a far superior product without having to tell somebody, hey, it's this age or that age. We still have aged products because some people want that, and we excel in that also.
Yeah.
And then our next category is SRP, which is special release product. It's basically a single cask type of a release. So we'll have a Merlot maturation cask. We'll have an Armagnac maturation cask, which recently won single cask of the year. And then we would have a few other type of finishes or maturation flavors or woods, and they'll be more exclusive, where they come in a nice tube, and it's all numbered. Every bottle is numbered, hand labeled, hand bottled, very exclusive. And then we have our other range, which is the likes of the cask M, which you have a sample of there, and the cask B, and further products are more being developed. So those are the categories.
Yeah. So where the area in which you can really experiment, I suppose, is the casks. It's the main area that your experimentation and innovation takes place. But originally Kinahan's was a highly respected and highly coveted whiskey back in the early 1800s, particularly established in 1779. And at one stage, well, actually, you tell the story of how the LL came on board. And then
the LL was the Lord Lieutenant. He obviously he loved the whiskey. He thought it was phenomenal whiskey, and he wanted this for his own personal use. He was the Lord Lieutenant at that stage. England was ruling Ireland at that stage, and he was sort of the governor or the ruler of the country at that stage over the British rule, basically. So he branded all these LL, and that became quite a famous trademark of the brand. So much so that some people started copying and trying to rip off these labels and product labels. As we know it today, people are always trying to have imitation watches or imitation handbags or various type of clothing. And the first history case in the Dublin courts of a trademark product where somebody was trying to imitate it, or in the tort of law passing off. So somebody was trying to pass off the Kinahan's label, but it wasn't Kinahan's because it became so popular. So there's a case in the court. I'm just trying to see what dates.
I think it was the 1860s. There was the
1860s
case.
Yeah, it was actually William Bolton versus Kinahan. So Kinahan versus Bolton, and that actually became a precedent case worldwide. Even some of the big brands are using it nowadays when they're trying to say, "Hey, judge, these guys can't be passing off our product as their product as ours," and it became a big precedent, you know.
Yeah, and they were very successful. I mean, they had a huge reach internationally, and they were seen as innovators in producing great whiskey, and premises throughout Dublin, of course. And
it was basically it was the experimentation, because at that stage there was still no rules like we have it today, where we have great government bodies that regulate whiskey, and now we know that whiskey has to be 3 years old. There is a reason for that, because it's not as harsh. But what they started realizing is that the longer, in those days, a cask was only a transportation storage vessel, okay? They were trying to move it around the place and then pour it out and serve it in bars and pubs and basically travel it abroad on the high seas. So the spirit that was in the cask the longest were the ones that used to travel quite far. And they started realizing, hey, there's something here, it's quite special, you know? And we're getting better flavors from these from this liquid. So much so that Jerry Thomas, the famous American mixologist, used to refer to Kinahan's in his whiskey cocktail book. And he said, if you want to take any Irish whiskey, you should take Kinahan's. And it's quoted, you can go and read it yourself. He says, because it's not as harsh as some of the other Irish whiskies. And he had obviously second choices and third choices, but Kinahan's was his first choice, and it's there in print, you know.
Yeah, I think he mentioned that in the 1860s, Jameson and Kinahan's were. But this is a measure of the success of the company. Here's the Carlisle building, which was near Carlisle Bridge and in city centre, just off Delair Street, and they had premises throughout and warehouses throughout Dublin.
They had warehouses in Marion Square, and I don't know if you've ever been in the Marion Hotel. There's a bar at the bottom, the cellar.
Yeah.
And you can see the vaults, and that's much the same as what those historical vaults were like. I mean, the whole of Marion Square was just full of whiskey and bonded alcohol, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Greenspot and Mitchell's warehouses were there as well, of course, as well. So, yeah. I mean, the company saw great success, and then all of a sudden in, I think, 1910, they merged with Bagot, and then I think eventually closed officially in 1988 as an ongoing operation. But the brand was resurrected when 6 years ago now, is it?
Yeah, around 2013, 2014. It was resurrected, and then the two products that came out first was that 10-year-old single malt and that heritage there, the blend, which is basically just a tribute to the old way of things. But it's not to say that, hey, it's the same product or the same mash bill, because there's no way that with the modern distillation equipment so we're not trying to say that hey lads, we're trying to replicate stuff. It's just basically a tribute to the old way and the old day of things, and to try and bring out a lovely heritage brand of Irish whiskey. And from there on, we basically developed, when I got on board, we started developing all these other products to get back to the true pioneering experimentation concept of Kinahan's. And that's why they were so successful in those days, because they stretched the parameters, and they basically did things differently, and that's what we're trying to do now, you know.
Yeah, and of course they never had a distillery of their own. They've always been kind of independent producers of whiskey.
Yeah, and that's the lucky bit for us, for our story also, because we're not trying to sell another story and say, hey, we're a distillery, or hey, we this or that. We just trying to stick to what their heritage and their lineage was, and basically just try and learn from that, and bring out great products, you know, with lots of innovation.
Well, look, I'm going to crack open a glass of this now, and maybe you can take us through this. So this is the Heritage Blends, a small batch Irish whiskey. This was one of your first releases, but I can see you're on to batch 8 of this.
Yeah. There's been a good amount of. It was very popular. I mean, and it was the first 2 products of the company. So let me just have a look here. I have a bottle here.
Well, look, I'll just show people there if they haven't come across it. That's the bottle there. What does that retail for?
To be honest with you, Sergio, I'm not sure, because it depends in which country it is. We actually don't sell any whiskey in Ireland. We just sell in the foreign markets.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, that's one thing. That's one reason I suppose people may not have heard from you.
Yeah.
And you know, I suppose as an independent, what was presumably that was a deliberate decision to go for the foreign international markets.
Yeah, it was a choice that the company themselves took, and I have no involvement in that. Yeah. But it does make sense, because the world markets are massive, and we're not trying to say, hey, we don't want to do business in Ireland, but there's a time and a place where eventually we will start selling whiskey in Ireland also. We're just trying to get the brand out more and get different markets going, you know?
Yeah. Well, look, Sláinte.
Sláinte. And thanks for having me.
So this is a blend, single malt and grain, I assume.
Yeah, yeah. This is one of the recipes that I didn't design. So these 2 products were started just before I started with the company. Now I've made some adjustments since I've joined.
Sure.
To keep it to the same as the original one, because I'm very much into sensory and tasting and quality control. And as liquids mature and various products change over time, because you said it's a small batch, and look at the numbers that have already been released,
yes.
You constantly have to be at things to make sure you don't lose consistency.
Yeah.
And
I mean, what are the parameters that change then, Quinzil, between batches? And what do you have to take into account to actually make them as consistent as possible?
It's not. I used the wrong wording, and I must apologize. I didn't make changes to it. What I'm trying to say is, as a blender, and this is the very important thing where you can see where people are in charge of their own blending. Take, for instance, COVID, okay? COVID sales went as high everywhere in the world, so products were taking a little bit longer before they were released, yeah? And if you don't keep your fingers on the pulse with products, your maturation might have taken more, you might have had more maturation on certain component of your blend, yeah?
Yeah.
And that will make that your product will not be consistent enough, because you say, yeah, you use different ages, you use different liquids, because it is a blend at the end of the day, yeah?
46%, it doesn't drink as 46%. It's very easy to drink.
Very gentle, very floral, very fruity, and you can get the apricot.
Yeah, I get apricot, peaches, strawberries. You kind of get the wood note as well.
But the wood note is lovely. It's very vibrant, gentle, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Was that the objective setting it out? I mean, did you have a particular style that you wanted to release, and then, or did you end up with this whiskey and this is how it turned out, and you just blended them?
Well, no, you have your recipes, and you when you're blending a product, you always set out to have a end goal, and you sometimes learn along the way, obviously, also, but you set your mind out with something that you want to do and create it, and then you basically adjust it to get that profile. And obviously there's a bit of trickery in that. You can play with different ages of components. So obviously that's a blend, so there's malt and grain, but it doesn't mean that all the grain has to be all the same age, yeah?
Sure.
As long as it stays within the whiskey profile and whiskey technical file, that it has to be more than 3 years old. And your malts also, I mean, your malt, you can have various components of your malt also. Not that I'm going to say what the percentage of this blend is, but it is a very well ratioed percentage also. So the malt is quite generous in this, but it's
you
not
get the notes in it.
What's that?
You get the notes of malt in it. I mean, definitely.
Yeah, but you can also, there's actually very old malt in this, and again, we don't say what it is, but you can get the chocolatey notes, but the chocolate of it also, but it's quite refreshing, you know. It's not like it's a sour or bitter, you know.
Yeah. Tell me, there's no coloring or it's non-chill filtered, is it? Or do you ever use coloring?
Non-chill filtered, no coloring, and 46%.
Yeah, and you don't ever use coloring in your products or chill filtration?
No, not at the moment. No. If we ever do, we will say that there's coloring, but I mean it's industry norm. You don't see some of the big products saying it also, you know. So what do you say and when do you say it, you know? But so far I don't. I'm quite sticky on that. And you'll see once we go to the other product there at the back.
Yeah.
What natural maturation, and it's all about what you derive from the wood. And what flavors, what color, what was the previous content of the wood, or what was the wood? Was it charred? Was it toasted? Was it Merlot, or was it a spirit that was in it, a white spirit? Because you can't tell somebody, hey, we've matured this in a white spirit, ex-white spirit, or ex-white wine, or any pre-content product, and then you go throw coloring into it, because if it was matured in a cask that was toasted of white wine and it's like black, you go, hey, lads, what did you do to this, you know?
Something wrong, all right. Yeah, something wrong. And I'm not a blender. Take us through a typical day, Quinzil. I mean, what would be your typical day as a blender, I suppose?
So a typical day could either be a lot of tasting or a lot of sample taking, and as things go, you wouldn't always be the only one that takes samples. You ask people in a warehouse to take a sample for you, or you take a sample yourself. Obviously, COVID was not as easy to get around. Sure. But so some days you would either be planning blends, or you would be planning recipes for new products or creating new products. You would also be revisiting old samples, and you'd be visiting new samples. So say now you have a product that's maybe, say, X amount of years old, and you want to release it as a product that either has a statement or no statement. It doesn't really matter. But you keep on setting the goal of this product that you want to release it sometime, and you have an end date for it. You keep on monitoring your product the whole time, resampling, tasting to see when you think it's ready. And that's the great thing about a small company like ourselves. There's no board of directors that are telling me as the blender what I need to do, or go to this, or we want this product now, or it has to taste like this. I have much control over the destiny of the company for the flavors and profiles of the product. Yeah. Now, obviously, I still have a boss, which is the owner, and you know who the owner is. And he still, obviously, there's... we talk a lot. Me and him would discuss what our plans are for a product, and we'd be monitoring it. We actually wanted to release a product in the start of COVID, and we couldn't because a big event was cancelled. So that product was just softly released. But it's also about monitoring products and learning. You know, you have different experiments going all the time also, Sergio. So you can't taste everything, and you can't drink everything all in one go, because it'll be very counterproductive, you know. A lot of my sampling would also be done at 20%, just to pick up profiles and things, and to check if it's smelling or tasting the way that I think it might in the future, or is there a problem? Or when I say a problem, not a problem that is the product gone off or anything, because whiskey doesn't really go off, but is there a different direction that it's going?
Yeah.
You know,
How do you determine when is the right time? I mean, obviously there are so many different components and you blend them all together and then you say,
yeah.
okay, this needs another 3 months, this needs another year or whatever. How do you determine when is the right time? And could you push it too far by over maturing as well?
I think certain things you can, and certain jurisdictions, there's certain products that can be over matured.
Yeah.
Irish whiskey is very gentle. It's when it comes to malts and grain, obviously, depending on if you maybe use a cask that's too fast maturing. And that's the reason why we only have a certain amount of chestnut staves in the 5 woods of the hybrid casks, because I don't want the chestnut to be overbearing. Chestnut matures very fast. It's a very fast breeding wood, so there's a lot of maturation also happening, and it can actually spoil the product. You don't want a product to be too dark also, depending on what your overall plan is for it. Is it going to be cask strength? Is it going to be reduced to a certain percentage? And again, when I develop a product for the company, we have a lot of tastings, and we get to what I call the sweet spot. So nobody tells me or the owner, we have to have it at this percentage. We start tasting until we're happy with a percentage that's palatable, enjoyable, and you get all the flavors and aromas from the product. Then we decide, okay, this is a strength that we sort of going to stick at, and we go down, we go up, and so those are all the factors, Sergio. You know.
Yeah, I suppose one of the big successes that you've had in one area where you've been very innovative, and I don't think it's been reproduced in Irish whiskey before, and certainly not since you released the cask project. Even spelling it backwards almost. How did that come about? What was the thinking behind that cask project? And for those that aren't familiar with it, it's the use of different types of woods in a single cask. How did it all come about? What was the lunacy thinking of that?
There's been lots of experimentation in the last few years. So for the audience, obviously, in Ireland, every cask is normally stored upright, and traditionally, most big pallets take 6 casks at a time. So what people started doing the last few years is they started experimenting with different toastings or charrings, or level 3 char or level 2 char, and there's all different kind of levels of charring. There's all different levels of toasting, and the best way in your mind to explain charring to people is, imagine you put your slice of toast in the toaster and you put it down and it comes out, and you put it down again. Well, what do you get then? You get burnt toast. So that's what a cask is, charred. And if a cask is charred, it makes the whiskey darker. Hence whiskey being a brown spirit when it's matured. The more the cask is used, the less charring is in the cask, the less darker the product becomes after multiple uses. Or toasting, you toast the cask like you would on your slice of toast. It's not burnt. It's just a nice sort of a dark yellow, light tan brown. And the best way to think of it is, if you take white wine, and you mature it in a cask, what do you want that white wine to look like when it goes to the bottle? You don't want it to be black, okay? Mm-hmm. So you put it into a very lightly toasted cask, which gives you lots of very slight, gentle flavors, okay? So people started putting maybe different heads into the bottom of the cask. These casks are standing up straight on a pallet, 6 on a pallet, and some people got great successes with these ways of doing it. I was involved a lot of times in fixing casks, maintaining casks, sometimes even taking them apart and messing around with them. And I got with this concept in my head that why blend loads of different casks? Why have one cask of this and 5 of that, and then you still have to put it together. Why not have all of these casks in one cask, and the liquid matures the same way, and it gets all those. So if you have 1,000 liters, every bit of the 1,000 liters has exactly the same exposure as the other 1,000 bit of liters. Not one has more oak, not one has more chestnut. They all have the same. So I went to the cooperage just when I joined Kinahan's, myself and the owner, and I said, I want to build these casks with all different staves. And the guy in the cooperage went to me, you're crazy, you know? And I said, yeah, but you know who you're talking to also, because I know it can be done, and I've put casks together, and you know I know about casks. I suppose so, yeah, we can do it, but it's going to be hard work. And I said, well, that's what I want done, you know? So the wood, there's 31 to 35 staves in a cask, okay? Yes. And we've divided these staves into a certain amount of the recipe to get flavors from every bit of exposure with the liquid. And that's how the hybrid cask was born.
Yeah. So, I mean, take us through the woods that are involved in that are components of that. And what are the challenges actually of putting those staves together? Because presumably, some may warp or absorb liquid at different rates and so forth. So it puts an awful lot of pressure on the cask. Yeah. How do you get around that?
Very, very hard. We got around it. So bourbon casks, which 90% of Irish whiskey is matured in and finished in most of the time, is very strong. The American oak, Quercus alba, it's the white oak, and the wood is so much stronger and so much more robust. Yeah, you can really abuse them casks and throw them around the place, and they take a lot of beating, you know. Whereas the French oak is more gentle, and obviously for reasons why they use it for wine and various other French spirits, you know. So all these kind of oaks all have the same characteristics, yeah. Basically, you can't say, this everything has vanilla flavors, basically oak, yeah. All types of oak has vanilla kind of flavor, and I was trying to find which woods would give me certain characteristics. Although they all have vanilla extract flavoring out of them, I wanted some of the woods that give us stronger other flavors, yeah? So like the Hungarian oak, yeah? It was very oaky, yeah? But there was also like a roasted coffee spiciness in it, yeah? Which was very different to the French oak. Yeah. And the French oak had its own characteristics, and I urge people to have a look on our website. We've actually broken it down, what we found from experimenting with separate casks of separate wood. What were the characteristics that were the more powerful characteristics from those woods? And that's why we chose them to put the cask together, yeah?
Yeah. Well, let me just show people there. They can see the cask itself with all the different components.
Yeah. And on our website, when you go into the tasting of the product of cask B and cask M, which is the hybrid blend and the hybrid malt, with these hybrid casks, you'll actually see what characteristics we got from each wood that was more stronger than what the other wood. So the 5 woods are Portuguese oak, American oak, French oak, Hungarian, and then the 5th wood, which is not an oak, is a chestnut. And like I said, we don't want to have too much chestnut in it because we don't want too much maturation or too much, when I say liquid evaporation maturation, and we didn't want to have too much flavor maturation contribution either. We wanted a happy medium for the whole product. And we found when we experimented with chestnut by itself that if it stays in too long, that was one of your questions earlier, does the product maybe get spoiled? No, it doesn't get spoiled. It just gets very strong characteristics.
Yeah. Well, look, I've tried the blend. I haven't tried the single malt, and you kindly gave me a sample of that. And just take us through that. So this is 45% Quinzil, I have to pick you out on this. So the bottle shrunk in the post. Yeah, just so you know.
That bottle was marked in case somebody tampered with it. You could see the markings on it, and that's where the label is. There's a reason in Methods in Madness, you know.
Yes, yeah. Well, look, I mean, I tried the blend before, and I found it to be incredibly well. I found it to be incredibly well balanced and easy to drink, and it would have been one of the things I would have thought wouldn't be the case, almost.
Yeah, it was like, again, there was lots of experimentation with the strengths, and I insisted that it was around 46 or 47% when I set out to make the product. And there was lots of arguments with everybody in the company, and some people thought maybe we should have lower strengths to have other markets and all that. And I settled for 43, which was strange because originally I planned to make it a higher percentage, you know, but yeah. I still got within the non-chill filtration percentage to make it a, if you want to say, craft connoisseur whiskey. And yeah,
I mean, looking at it firstly, I mean, obviously you can see it's a lot darker than the previous blend that we had.
Yes.
So take us through the composition of this, and maybe if you can give us a little bit more insight into the age statement of it.
Yeah, I don't go into age statements, Sergio. It's more about the components and the product and the finish and the maturation process of it. There is no age statement on this product. So we just discussed a few seconds ago the blend itself, but now we have the picture there of the malt. So that's the malt, hybrid malt, single malt product, and that is 45%. So the blend is 43%, and this is 45%. Okay, so you can nose it there, Sergio, and there's a lot going on in it.
There is, yeah, and actually, it is an awful lot more viscous than the blend. I mean,
but this is a malt, yeah. This is a single malt, yeah. So a blend is always, and not to say what the ratios are, but a blend can be anything from 70% grain to 30% malt, or more or less, you know. And this is solely malt. Now, we had a lot of very distinguished whiskey drinkers that actually drank the blend in the hybrid cask style, and they went, "Wow, this is great malt," you know. And in fairness to them, they were shocked when they were told it was a blend, but they still said, "Hey, we love this, and it doesn't matter if it's a blend," you know.
Yeah. Is there still that snobbiness or pretentiousness around malts and blends?
I think there is, but we're working on changing all this. And hey, if you want to get a really good malt, I'll let you pay for it, and we can give you that. I can give you a very good malt that's not age statement, and you can pay for that also because it'll be rare and quite special. You know, it's all about people's choice and what they like, you know. But to get back to this, so this is the malt, okay, the single malt, and it's the 5 woods again. It's the American oak, the French oak, the Hungarian, the chestnut, and the Portuguese, okay? So I don't tell people what the previous history of the wood either is, just where it's from, okay?
Yeah.
And basically, the casks have been made with these 5 woods, okay? And I want people to guess because it makes it more exciting and more interesting, yeah?
Well, you'd be hard pushed to guess all the individual stays from that, but I do get the chestnut out of it, definitely.
Yeah. But it's not very sharp in your nose, although it's 45%, isn't it?
No, I haven't tried it yet in terms of taste, but in terms of the nose, I mean, I really get green fruit, actually. And I get freshly cooked grass and those kind of notes off it.
Yeah, there's a lot of mango in it, freshly cut mango and pineapple. So it's all the tropical fruits, yeah?
Yeah. And
then poached spice, pear, molasses. Molasses also from like rum plantations, and the tropics. And obviously, there's a good bit of hint of vanilla also from the oak, you know?
Yeah. There's a treacle there as well, a kind of caramel.
But that's what it comes in the palate, you know? It's the charred apricots, caramelized tropical fruits, sun-dried grapes, and then a bit of espresso burnt sugar. You know, when you're making like a dessert with a bit of espresso and sugar, and you're making it thick on like a pan, and you're going to pour it over some ice cream or something, and that
I kind of get it. I kind of almost get tiramisu note off it. You know, it's lovely. Yeah, but again, very drinkable.
That's that espresso kind of bit from the tiramisu that you get, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I have to say, I mean, it's a really lovely golden color. I mean, again, are you happy with, you know, obviously you release it, so you must be happy with it, but...
I am. When
how many times do you get it right, Quinzil?
What's
you know,
that?
for every time you get it right, how many times do you get it wrong?
I haven't had it wrong yet. Touch wood.
Not in terms of actual release, but in terms of...
No, I haven't had it wrong.
To reach this.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm lucky. And you make mistakes as you go along. If anybody says you don't make mistakes, well, then they're telling lies. But I've never made a mistake where I've damaged the product or there was detriment to the company or anything like that. More when I say mistakes or I misjudge maybe how this flavor will add to that flavor. Those are the kind of mistakes. But those
presumably you don't release them unless you're happy.
Yeah. But you learn from those mistakes also, because sometimes you will get a different flavor that you weren't expecting, and you go, "Ooh, that's very nice."
Have you had any nice surprises that you come across that you didn't expect?
I have. Yes, I have. There's something that I was working on for a while. It's called Quadrat. And I've got the labels in with the Department of Agriculture, and it's been approved, so it's due for bottling soon. And the reason we call it Quadrat is it's in our special release project division, which is those kind of special release, single cask, limited numbered bottling kind of hand bottled stuff.
Yeah.
And it's basically 4 different types of casks. Yeah. So it's Madeira, Merlot, Tawny Port, and Chestnut, and I've made a blend of these single malts.
Wow. Okay.
And there's a limited amount of maybe say 2,500 to 3,000 bottles now. Phenomenal stuff, yeah.
How does that not get confused, or does it just give it more character and more complexity?
It gives it a bit more complexity, but they also complement each other.
Right.
But again, you have to know what liquid goes together. When you do something like that, it doesn't always mean that every cask is 5 years old, or every cask is 10 years old, or every cask is 15 years old. One cask might be 10 years old, one cask might be 15, one cask might be 5. You know, it's how you complement each of the 4 components to finish a final product, you know?
Yeah. I mean, is that the first time that there's been so many different, especially, they're all fortified wines, essentially.
They're all, sorry, what?
Fortified wines, you know.
Yes.
Those casks.
Yeah. Well, apart from the Chestnut.
Yes.
Yeah, and the Merlot. Yeah, no, there's been lots of stuff like that done in big bulk, where they probably would maybe have a little bit of this and that, but the ratios were never the same, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you might hear of Tawny Port and another fortified, but having 4 different components going together is quite unusual, no?
Yeah. We're working a lot of single grain stuff also. That's quite exciting. That'll be quite special down the line.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, these kind of projects, we also bring out stronger versions of some of our products. So there's a lot of that in the pipeline. Stuff that's already been labeled, and we're basically just sending it out to markets pretty soon, you know.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's obviously been a huge increase in interest in single cask and cask strength releases. As a drinker of whiskey, though, I mean, what does cask strength and single cask give you? And would you be watering them down yourself to drink?
There's a time and a place for all these kind of things, and depends how you like your whiskey.
Yeah.
I never tell anybody put water in or don't put water in or don't put ice, or I drink my whiskey neat. But when I'm experimenting, I like to put a little drop of various things, but lab experimenting, not experimenting sitting on my armchair. I like to drink my whiskey neat, cask strength most of the time, because cask is very special. Cask strength, a select cask is something very unique, because one cask is not going to taste the same as the next one. There can be two Merlot casks from the same vineyard filled with the same amount of aged malt at the same time, and they might taste very different here.
Yeah, no, I've experienced that. Yeah, it's amazing how that can happen.
Uniqueness of it,
Yeah. And is that something that you're going to pursue? Are you going to do single cask releases? And you mentioned some of the special releases you're going to be doing. Can you give us an insight into what's coming down the road for us? Or is that classified?
No, there's a bit of classified sort of stuff. There's a lot of classified stuff, but there's just more innovation and a bigger selection of stuff. I think you've had a taste a long time ago of one of our Amarone malts. All those kind of things. There's a lot of demand for it, and good quality. People are sick of being ripped off with products that are overpriced and not delivering what they say it's supposed to deliver,
Yeah. As far as I know, I don't think you have a whiskey over €100, do you?
We might have some of it in some of the different markets, but it's specific to those markets only. But they're all around the 70, 80, as far as I know, in sterling. Some of the SRP products are much, much higher than that, but they special for limited customers and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
There's some very exclusive hotels that have got some right to some of the products also, so they're a little bit more special.
Tell me, is the idea ever to have your own distillery, or are you always going to be an independent producer?
I don't know is the answer, but as far as I know for now, we're sticking to our plan that we have, and we keeping this concept of the traditional pioneering of Kinahan's without owning a distillery.
Yeah,
we might own one down the line. I don't know, and I can't say yes or no because I don't even know myself.
Yeah, you won't tell us.
No, we do like to experiment with liquids, but I don't know of any future plans of a distillery, to be honest.
Yeah, talking about innovation, we kind of mentioned that briefly. Tell us about this. I think it was the NFT where Kinans basically are aligned with a motor racing company and got involved in sponsoring that.
Yeah, that NFT things are big nowadays, and there was a lot of feedback. It sold at the same time as the race was on. There was an auction. It was very popular. The site actually crashed. There were so many people queuing to buy this race car with Kinahan logos on it and everything. I've been told, and I'm not so much involved in that, but I have been told that it's been sold and it's been relisted for some other exotic NFT auction. And apparently there's serious figures that are going to be offered for this sale now of this product.
Yeah. And I presume that was done purely as a marketing branding exercise, although,
it was. And again, that's more marketing related than what I'm involved in. I obviously know what's going on, but I can't really talk out of sight of the marketing plans.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these things that's happening at current moment with the company. So there's watch the space.
Yeah. Give us an idea how many casks you have in Bond. Is it hundreds or thousands?
Oh no, it's a few thousand.
Really, yeah. So there's an awful
Yeah.
lot. And the key
You
markets
don't
for you
brag
then.
about these kind of things, Sergio. It's not something that one brags about, or we
No, I'm
just
just
get
trying to
on.
get an indication of how big the company is, because I think a lot of people wouldn't get that. A lot of people in Ireland certainly wouldn't get the impression that the company is as large as it is.
Kinahan is in about just short of 30 countries worldwide, and we have some markets where we do very well.
Yeah.
We don't advertise in Ireland, and that's why a lot of people don't know about us. And we tend to stick to all the big shows abroad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one
But
of the
we
things I
all
wanted to get you on for was really to kind of get the viewpoint, if you like, of an independent producer, not just an independent bottler, but an independent producer, and some of the challenges. I mean, what are the big challenges that you have?
I think the challenge sometimes is that people think that we're smaller than what we are. And we have to obviously, once they get to know us, they go, wow, these guys are a little bit bigger than what we thought. There is sometimes a little bit of a stigma of this. We might be classed as bottlers until we explain that we're not bottlers. We actually do all our recipes in-house, and the likes of myself that come on board with the company is involved in all the stuff, and we can offer various products. And then obviously COVID has been a big challenge for every company to get the word out there, and the industry is hurting, It's been very tough.
If somebody does want to get your product then in Ireland, for example, I mean, how can they? Do they have to go through an international supplier to get that?
They'll have to go through an international site. If they want to buy in big volume, if they reach out to us, we can see if it's worth our while. But at the moment, the sales team is not selling stuff in Ireland, and it's not much in my control, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know Russia and China are big markets for you. Is it easier to compete in those markets rather than go into America, where a lot of the big brands are already established?
No, it's not, because there's a lot of products out there already, and there's a lot of big companies out there already. I mean, there's products that me and you have never heard about that are bigger than some of the products that we think are big products.
Yeah.
I think it's just about training people in various markets, reaching out to them, empowering them, and basically supporting them. So that's probably one of the reasons we do well in those markets. We've put a lot of legwork in, and we spend a lot of time in those markets, nurturing them. Also, Germany is a very big market for us. We do very well in Germany.
Yeah, it is a big market. They have a big interest in Irish whiskey there.
They do, yeah.
And
there's a lot of Irish bands in Germany that aren't even Irish, and they play Irish music, and they come to all these events.
Yeah. Well, who do you see as your main competitor there in terms of countries? Obviously, Scotch is a big one, I'd imagine, is your main competitor out there. But do you see any other countries emerging that are rivals, if you like?
To Irish whiskey?
Yeah.
No, I think Irish whiskey is a very unique product, and it's not just growing. There's a reason why Irish whiskey is growing. It's quite a sophisticated drink also, and hence the reason why Irish whiskey has become so popular with women. Previously, brands and regions have not paid as much attention to women consumers, and I think Irish whiskey is very popular with women also. So that's another big market that's obviously being nurtured. But I don't see Scotch. Scotch is a bit boring. They haven't been as innovative as the Irish have been. There's also reasons why they haven't been as innovative. They've restricted themselves with a lot of their Scottish whiskey file regulations.
Yeah.
I think the Irish have been more innovative, and like I said, it's not a gender drink, Irish whiskey. where Scotch, I think years ago, was seen as a gender drink, and that's one of the big differences also. And it's a phenomenal product. I mean, it is. Irish whiskey is so smooth and gentle, you know.
Yeah. But is there that complexity and depth of character as well?
There is, and there's a lot of innovation. I mean, you know, we say we do a lot of innovation. There's innovation with Irish whiskey, a lot of companies and brands, and this revival of Irish whiskey has opened the market up of promoting Irish whiskey around the world. Also, some of the bigger brands have obviously spent more money on promoting Irish whiskey, which is good for the category, you know.
Yeah, I mean, do you see that as vital that the whole category is lifted by everybody?
I think so, but there is a lot of negativeness also within the category sometimes. Yeah. But we don't get involved in any of that sort of stuff, and that's one of the reasons we just are seen to just
profile here.
We keep a low profile, but we're not as low profile as people think we are, you know, because we, at the end of the day, want to sell good whiskey and make good products, and we don't want to be involved in, you know, negativeness of the category.
Yeah. Where do you see the future, Quinzil? Or what lies in the future for Irish whiskey and for Kinahans?
I think the future for Kinahans is very bright. As we expanding our markets, we also learning as we've been going on. You know, the company's been going for a few years now, so the brand's getting bigger. We starting to get a serious following also of Kinahans. There's a lot of different places where you would not have seen the likes of Irish whiskey before, like in Italy. We're doing very well in Italy. We're doing very well in the cocktail scene. I think the cocktail scene is going to be an explosion in the next year. I've always been a bit anti-cocktail myself, but I can see where cocktail things are going, you know. I could never find that I want to put my very good rare whiskey into a cocktail. But now if somebody wants to pay for it and enjoy it, well, what a pleasure. Yeah. I see the category going very big worldwide, and I see it becoming very dominant, like it was prior to Prohibition, because Prohibition obviously hurt the Irish whiskey. And there's more competition now also, so there's more brands out there, there's more products, and it's good. It's good. It's good for business.
Yeah. What do you want to achieve within the company itself in terms of new releases, or, you know, how do you see your role developing?
I see my role just getting more active in more regions, you know, and visiting and learning from all these regions. Obviously, now that COVID's opening up, I think we can share our story to more people than what we did before. You know, our brand is growing, yeah. We had a very successful year last year during COVID. We produced multiple thousands bottles more during COVID than what we did any of the previous years. And the previous years to COVID, since I joined, we also quadrupled our production every year. So I don't see that. I don't see the popularity of whiskey not getting bigger. You know.
Yeah.
If it did so well during COVID, what's going to happen next? You know, it's going to be.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, is your whiskey consumed mostly in a bar, or is it consumed mostly as a bought bottle?
I think prior to COVID, we probably would have said a lot of majority of stuff was presumed in bars with exotic cocktails and things, and people were buying it. But now people are ordering online in multiple jurisdictions in big volumes. Because they haven't been able to go to the bars. But when the bar scene goes back again, I think people are, you know, there's Irish coffee that we sell in the Netherlands with our 10-year-old whiskey, and we can't keep up with it, because they love that 10-year-old whiskey and the Irish coffee, and they pay for it. You know, I think it's €34 or.
Wow, That's
or
expensive.
something like that for Irish coffee. But alcohol is cheaper, obviously, in the Netherlands to what it is here with the duty. So, that was a few years ago.
Very good. Very good. What do you do, Quinzil, when you're not working? Because I mean, you're juggling many different tasks at the one time. Do you get a chance to relax and do your own thing?
I do. I do a lot of hill walking. I live in the Cooley Peninsula, obviously, so I do a lot of walking in the Mons across the bay and in the Cooley Mountains. When we were very busy pre-COVID, when we used to fly so much, I often used to go walking at night in the mountains. So yeah, there's a healthy balance also,
Yeah, well, being from South Africa, you must do some pretty mean barbecues as well, I imagine.
Yeah, well, that's one of the other things where I said my passion for whiskey started from all the cooking. I have an outdoor kitchen. I actually have a 20 square meter covered roof outdoor kitchen with granite tops and everything, where I cook and entertain, and I cook full roasts and roast chickens and roast legs of lamb and everything on it,
So the next time I'm passing, I'm heading for Belfast, so I'll drop in on my way. And
the cask actually, I designed cask also for those kind of socializing kind of things. So cask is a very lifestyle kind of a whiskey, malt or the blend, and I used to experiment with it in the barbecue also with desserts, where I used to caramelize things, and that's one of the other things where.
Give us a good whiskey food recipe.
I will. There's a few that I can give you. Whiskey actually goes very well with salmon. If you're cooking salmon on the barbecue, just pour a little bit of whiskey over to give it some flavor,
Right. I haven't tried that. Somebody had told me that
you can caramelize pineapples on the barbecue and peaches and all that, and top it off with a bit of whiskey and cream,
Right. That's something I'll bear in mind the next time I get the weather to do a barbecue. So next year. Yeah. But look, Quinzil, I just want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been really interesting to get another perspective on the Irish whiskey industry, because often people are very focused on the distilleries, and understandably so, I guess. But
well, they spend a lot of money.
Yeah. But I mean, it is important that we give the consumers as much variety as possible, and be that through blends or malts or new casks and so forth. So thank you very much for sharing that insight with us. Wish you all the very best with it. And hopefully when all COVID comes to an end, we'll get to meet up and have a few drams together. And I'll hold you to that barbecue.
Yeah, well, that would be great. And thanks for your time. And I also want to thank everybody that signed in to listen to us tonight, or that's going to listen to us in the future. Thanks for everybody's time, and I always appreciate people taking the time to listen to whiskey, and it's greatly appreciated.
Well, look, Quinzil, thank you very much. To your health.
To your health and everybody else's. Hopefully, this COVID is behind us pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we'll be in touch again, I'm sure, soon, and take care in the meantime, Quinzil.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Sergio.
Cheers, Sláinte. Well, thanks to Quinzil for taking the time to join us. It's an interesting insight into the Irish whiskey sector from a different perspective. So, and of course, there are many independent producers out there. Some are independent bottlers, some are independent bonders, and we'll try and get some of those on the show over the next while as well. We have 40 distilleries now, and I suppose maybe half of them are producing, but it just shows how exciting the future is for us. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. I know it's a busy week and everybody is doing their own thing at the moment, and a lot of people are on holiday, so hopefully you're enjoying that. And we'll be back next week. Another interesting show lined up next week. And thank you for joining. If you have enjoyed the show, please do give us a like on social media or follow us on YouTube. And of course, this show is brought to you by Irish Whiskey Magazine. So if you are enjoying the show, supporting the magazine is a great way of keeping this going. So Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves. Sláinte.